Today, I am going to tell you the story of a patient who died, was in the morgue, and came back to life. I saw the file of the patient who shouldn't be alive, and yet she was. At that time, I worked as a transplant coordinator at the General Hospital of Tijuana. And in that same service, we saw many patients who also came for nephrology consultations, meaning to have their kidneys checked. And this was a patient, a young lady in her 30s, almost reaching 40, but always smiling. Unlike other patients, she looked healthy, because patients who have some kidney disease, well, you can tell not just in their mood, but also certain coloration and characteristics in their skin. Well, one day that patient comes up to me and says, Alicia, I would like to know why the doctors always say in the consultations that I am a rare case. Ambas to give you a little context, in the consultation, it was not only the main doctor, the specialist, the nephrologist, but there were always doctors, either interns or medical students, who were present during the consultation. And the doctor would also explain things to them with the patient present. So she heard that she was a rare case, even though she didn't understand the medical terms they were talking about her. So I took it upon myself to go get her file. I said to her, come, let's go to my office. I'll get your file and see how I can help explain a little to you. He said, I was surprised at first that the file was like this. I mean, unlike the other files, I said it's huge for how young she was, etc. But well, quickly, the only thing I saw was that she had an autoimmune disease in her ultrasounds. There were ultrasounds where it said her kidneys looked a bit smaller, which is an indication of a disease that already of the renal of the kidney. And also sometimes in some ultrasounds, it said that the kidneys could not be seen, and especially one kidney more than the other, that they could not be seen, as if sometimes they appeared and sometimes there were no kidneys. So Nieto no, or a certain case, I tried to explain that to her, and I said, Mo was effective. Maybe that's why they say that, but look, all your lab results are good, your kidney function is good, you're doing very well. You're not like other patients who will later need dialysis, everything is fine. You really are a rare case. And she said to me, Alicia, can I tell you something and you won't get scared? And I said, of course not, without knowing what she was going to tell me, but super intrigued to know what it was that she thought might scare me. Well, she told me that she had 3 daughters, and the youngest, who at that time would have been about 10 years old, she told me that during that pregnancy, they told her it was a high-risk pregnancy, and that she had to abort because her life was in danger, her life, right, as a mother, and she already had her other 2 daughters. She consulted with her husband. They looked into it and decided not to abort and to continue the pregnancy. When the time for delivery came, everything was going very well. She was happy for having made that decision, but at the moment of delivery, she suffered a severe hemorrhage and died. She told me many, many details that I will try to comment on the most relevant ones. Look, she recounts from the moment she dies how it happened, not only that she saw herself leaving her body, but she says it was a building, a hospital in the United States with several floors, and she was seeing how she was going up floors until she leaves the hospital. As she leaves the hospital, she says, I don't know how to explain myself. There were many things she didn't know how to put into words, but I will convey what she communicated to me and how I felt it. She says, your mom, I don't know how to tell you, but when I left the hospital, I could feel what a tree felt. If I looked at a tree in the distance, I could see the tree and somehow feel and communicate. I don't know how, like I could talk to that tree. Then I would see something else, and there were many people far away, and I could right hear what those people were saying. She says that also she doesn't know, but she saw like a horse inside what was going up like that. And she also knew how to feel what the horse was feeling, experiencing at that moment. Then, well, it kept ascending until she saw a very beautiful light, which is what everyone, well, many people say. She just saw a light, and then she says she was in front of a screen. She says, as if it were a very big television. And there I started to see my whole life like they were showing it to me on that screen. She says, I felt a lot of love. I felt very happy. I was really content watching, like she was seeing everything there, but feeling extreme happiness and a lot of love. She says that at that moment when she was watching, she didn't remember that she had daughters. She didn't remember anything about her life, that she was living on earth, so to speak. But she says that when she was going to the end of her life, she saw that she was in childbirth, that a girl was born, and that she died. And she says that at that moment, when she saw that, she remembered that she was not only leaving that newborn girl, but also her other two daughters. And she said that she still didn't see anyone in front of her, but she started, my God, if you can hear me, I want to talk to you. Then she felt another light. She describes it like this, as if she knew that was God, that light was God. And she started to speak and tell him that, well, she hadn't been bad in her life, to let her return, that she wanted to be with her daughters, that she didn't want them to grow up without a mother. Well, and she tells me she made a promise to God that if she was allowed to return, she would always not only tell the story, but also say that God does exist, that she saw him, that she spoke with him. She asked to live until the girl was 15 years old. I mean, no, I don't know why she thought of that age, but she told me that's what she said, to let her live until that little girl who had just been born turned 15. And she says she automatically felt herself returning to her body. She tells me, as she described it to me like this, but since I am in the medical field, I found it fascinating how she was describing it to me with her words, and I was imagining it. And she says she first felt the heart. I mean, she says, I don't know how to explain it to you, but I felt like boom. Like she says, like imagine everything was deflated and my heart inflated and the blood started to flow. She says, and I don't know how to say it, that I felt it and saw it. And then my lungs, then other organs. Then she says, I don't know many of the organs, but I was seeing how they were filling with blood and inflating again. Well, here comes a super magical part, like a movie, I say, because I was there with my mouth open, listening to the story. Then he says that when he felt his whole body functioning, he became aware of where he was, and he was on a stretcher covered with a sheet, but he couldn't move. She tried to move and couldn't. She could only move her head, and when she slightly moved it, she saw there were other stretchers with other bodies just like her, and she said, oh, I'm where all the dead are, and no one is going to come here for me. So testo, punto teta, I'll give you a preview of this part of the story. She was like in the morgue, but of the hospital, still the same hospital. Then she says that when she was trying to move more and she couldn't speak, couldn't make any sound. She saw a nurse passing by who was listening to music, singing, and she tried to move her head to get his attention. But well, she says he just walked past and said, no, well, he didn't see me. But she says in seconds, he came back to where she was and says he stared at her, well, at her face. She says, I couldn't speak, I couldn't move. What occurred to me when I saw the nurse's face here was to smile. And she says that when she smiled at him, the nurse screamed, and ran out running and said, that's it, that's it. So it was like her chance again, and she thought no one was going to come back. But then in a few minutes, the nurse returned with a whole team of people. She says they took her on the stretcher to a kind of room. She says a room, well, like intensive care. They started to she says they started to connect machines and things, well, monitors and everything. But well, she was already fine. She was alive. Everything was fine. And when she finished telling me the whole story, all the details, I asked her, and how do you feel? I understood because I asked her, how old is your little girl now? How do you feel? How has your life been after that? Onda, siya simpo. And she told me that it lasted several months or a long time after that event. Sometimes I was folding clothes inside my house, she says, arranging things, and I could hear people talking as if they were right here, close to my window talking, she said, and I would look out and see that they were people who were far away. It could be a block or more, she said. And I spent a long time like that until it started to fade away. It started to fade away, and now I no longer felt it. I no longer experienced it like that. But I asked her, and how have you managed your life? And she told me, yes, I talk to anyone I can about Jesus. I talk about God. I don't share this experience. She said, I think people will say I'm crazy, that something's wrong with me. After that, I would notice when she went to her appointment. And it's true that wherever she sat waiting to go in, there were always other patients. And she, well, I tell you, she was always smiling, very talkative. And it was because she sought to, well, start conversations with the other patients, talk to them about God, to say any word of hope. And the lesson she left me, she said, Alicia, never be afraid of anything that happens to you, no matter how serious you think it is. Like death, if you speak to God from your heart, He will grant you what you are asking for. Say, and something I want to add and tell you is that the only sure thing we have in this life is that we are going to die. That process is part of life. So if we already know that someday that moment will come, why do we always live with doubts, with questions, with uncertainty? I think that if we have death assured, why not start making changes to live with certainty, with faith, with confidence in yourself, in what you want, in who you are? Because God is within you. I am absolutely sure of that. I have confirmed it in thousands of people I have interacted with. So place all your certainty in yourself, in God, or in something greater that you believe in, your Creator, and live your life more fully. Tell me what you thought of this story, what you think. Have you heard or experienced something similar? I would love to read your thoughts, so write them there for me. Subscribe, share this story, and until the next story.